listening to Unravel with Natalie Denise.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Nightly with Natalie. That is I, in case you were wondering. Hope you guys are having a good day or will have a good day if you're listening to me in the morning. Hello to everybody. Hello to Patriot Voice on Roku, where I also stream. Hello, YouTube. Hello, everybody who listens to me on audio. I hope you guys will find the news today enlightening. As always, like I say, this is some stuff that gets dark every single day. Dark news, everything is new to us every day. It's just a renewed dark story. But with that, it's still important to, show what's going on in the world. Let me just recall one other story that I have. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to start off with justice.gov. All right, so this published yesterday, a Dallas man, he pleaded guilty yesterday for leading a violent sex trafficking organization. If you guys remember, just a couple weeks back, there was another trafficking organization that was uncovered or also published by the justice.gov, where there were like Chinese nationals, and they led a very violent ring where they were beating women. They were doing some really, really explicit stuff that you would only see it in a horror movie. But it was very, very sadistic. And it seems to be that we're reading more and more sadistic stories like this, where it gets more violent. And this is how they use fear-based coercion to basically keep these victims in line. A Dallas man who called himself Magnificent pleaded guilty today to human trafficking, announced by U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, Chad E. Meacham. Tremont Blakemore, who is 42 years old, was first charged in September of 2019. He pleaded guilty Wednesday to sex trafficking through force, fraud, and coercion before U.S. District Judge Ada Brown. This defendant systematically brutalized his victims. This is a quote, convincing them that they had no choice but to live according to his dictates, said U.S. Attorney Chad Meacham. We formed the North Texas Trafficking Task Force, a coalition of federal, state, and local law enforcement dedicated to ending the scourge of human trafficking to pursue cases just like this one. We hope that this guilty plea will be the balm of survivors so they can work to rebuild their lives. The defendant's era of coercing and violently forcing individuals into perils of sex trafficking is over, thanks to the work of our special agents and law enforcement partners who investigated and arrested this deviant criminal, said Deputy Special Agent in charge of HIS Dallas, Bradley Hudson. We will soon face the harsh realities of his transgressions as he spends a good portion of his life behind bars. In plea papers, Mr. Blakemore admitted to running a large-scale human trafficking organization using the threat of grotesque violence to force women to engage in commercial sex acts for his financial benefit. So just as an education piece, you guys know that this is called guerrilla pimping. So there's two types of pimping, notorious two types. One is called Romeo pimping and one is called guerrilla pimping. Romeo pimping, which could also just be a first stage of pimping, is when a Romeo pimp will, by the nature of the name, they will romanticize the relationship. They will love bomb the victim into believing that they are in a relationship. They will do things like getting to know their vulnerabilities. So a lot of these victims come from broken backgrounds, especially if they're younger. So these victims, if they're coming from broken homes, like parents are having troubles, they have a broken parenthood and backgrounds, broken family. The family can't meet their needs, like basic things like food, clothing, things like this. The Romeo pimp will get to know these vulnerabilities, and these are great narcissists. They will then prey on those vulnerabilities. They will give them what they need, such as they will shower them in gifts, shower them in bill money, like so they'll pay for their bills, or if it's a college student, they'll pay for their books, something like this. And then once the victim is ensnared in this scheme, then they will they basically flip them to do things that they want them to do, which in essence is trafficking, right? So this is what happens. This is what happens to these victims. Guerrilla pimping is a type of pimping where they utilize fear-based coercion by threatening and also by violence. And so they use this to, basically keep them in line and keep them scared from running away. So that's what guerrilla pimping is. And like I said before, guerrilla pimping can come in a form of like a second, it's like a second stage to all this. So they could be romanticized by a Romeo pimp, and then they could either switch over to a gorilla pimp or the gorilla pimp, So it comes in different nuances, but just so you guys know what that's all about. All right. So this guy used violence to basically keep these victims in line. He compelled the women to engage in commercial sex and posted ads for them on sites like Backpage.com, which is now ceased, as you guys know, back in the Trump era. He demanded that women to turn all proceeds over to him and required them to seek permission for personal expenditures. Mr. Blakemore further admitted that when his victims disobeyed his rules, leaving the house without his permission, keeping money for themselves, etc., he used violence to quell them into submission. According to court documents, victims told law enforcement that he slapped, punched, choked, kicked, and burned them with cigarettes. I'm going to make an example out of someone soon, he wrote in a group text message to the victims. I will not continue to tolerate disrespect. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. In an effort to appear successful in order to recruit additional victims into his trafficking organization, Mr. Blakemore admitted to use the proceeds of his victims' sexual encounters to purchase luxury goods, including multiple pieces of diamond and gold jewelry and multiple Rolex watches. He flaunted his lifestyle to impress other traffickers and even sported multiple trophies touting his success as a pimp. Mr. Blackmore now faces 20 years in federal prison. His sentencing has been set for Thursday, October 6th. So, again, just one other pimp who got sentenced. But again, as we speak, they're doing this every day, different day. Janet says, is this the cop from Boston? No, but we are going to get to that story as well. Let's see what's going on. The other one. Let's get to the cop story since you mentioned it. Okay, so this is the cop story that Kay Janet is talking about. Highlight your comment here. Okay, I think I'm breaking up and I don't know why, once again, but I am here. Here it is. Okay, is this the cop in Boston? There we go. All right, so this is coming from the Daily Mail. I saw you for what you are, predator of the defenseless, child rape victims tear apart ex-Boston police chief who cries in court as he's caged for 13 years for crimes against 7 to 16-year-olds. 7-year-olds, as young as 7-year-olds. And get this, the police union, the police force knew about this and did nothing and kept him on the force. This is insane. Okay, let's take a look at this. Former Boston police union chief wept in court Monday as the child rape victims tore into him after the disgraced cop admitted to raping and sexually abusing several children over the span of nearly 3 decades. Ex-Police Patrolmen's Association boss Patrick Rowe, 67, pleaded guilty to 21 counts of child rape and sexual assault that occurred over a 27-year period. That's almost 3 decades. involving victims ranging from the age of 7 to 16, prosecutors said. The former cop sat in court and cried as he listened to some of his victims deliver impact statements before he was sentenced to up to 13 years in prison. They say, I saw you for what you really are, a coward, a predator of the weak, and the defenseless, the victim said in court. Rose has lost his reputation as a protector. Again, to remind you, he was a cop. Your reputation said, all you will ever be remembered is another creep who has nothing going for him. Your job as a cop protecting people, well, that's really quite ironic, isn't it? Rose had first faced child sexual abuse allegations in the mid 1990s, but get this, criminal charges were dropped. Okay, I'm going to make an inference and I'm going to make a speculation here. You guys will hear me in just a second. However, Rose was allowed to remain on the force for years, despite sufficient evidence found by internal investigators supporting added allegations that he sexually assaulted a minor, according to documents released by the city last year. Okay, let's go back, right? Let's go back. Let's take a pause here and just let's do this dissection. So Rose had faced child sexual abuse allegations in the mid 1990s. Charges were dropped. However, Rose was allowed to remain on the force for years despite sufficient evidence found by internal investigators. Okay, pause. So my speculation is that there was probably, I wonder if this guy was in a fraternal order of police. You guys know that the Masons have these orders and they protect each other in the police. I am not blind to that, and this happens quite a bit to the bad policemen out there that get compromised, and they are pretty much pressured to protect each other, even in heinous crimes like this. This is my biggest inference, that this could have possibly been one of those things, because I would not imagine anything else. Why would they protect this man who has done heinous things to children? You guys tell me. Yeah, Rana, that's what I think. I think that this was, Rana says, Satanist. This seems to me that there was an order of protection over this guy. It makes me wonder what associative secret societies, or, they're not so secret because they flaunt themselves out in the open. But it makes me wonder if he was part of a fraternal order of police in which they protected. Can't imagine anything else from them getting the charges dropped, like straight up dropped. And then not only dropped, he was allowed to stay on the force. What other scenario can you imagine that would happen? Because for everyday people like you and me, that would never happen. Getting heinous charges dropped. Kay Janet says he probably was one who got kids for other sickos. I would not doubt that. I would not doubt that at all. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay, continued on. So this is him in shame and crying, completely embarrassed, and he should be. Let's take a listen.
A former Boston police officer and union boss is now a convicted child rapist. Patrick Rose will spend at least a decade in prison for his crimes after changing his plea from not guilty to guilty. He pled guilty to nearly 24 child sexual abuse charges, including child rape. The incident spanned over nearly 30 years, and all of them involved his own family members, some as young as 7 years old. The Boston Police Department was aware of the allegations against Rose as early as 1995, but allowed him to stay on the force. Once he's released, Rose will spend another decade on probation. He'll have to wear an ankle monitor and register as a sex offender.
Adam Jones.
Now, again, what other scenario could you imagine that would allow for this to play out like this? Rose has been relieved of his weapon and placed on administrative duty, but was returned to full duty after the attorney of the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, wrote to the commissioner in 1997 and threatened to file a grievance according to the documents obtained by NBC Boston. I really want to see these documents. I don't know about you guys, but I want to see these documents because I want to know how this turns about. Give me the documents. Give me the documents. Sexually assaulted. Okay, let's take a look at this article here.
A retired Boston police officer.
Okay, it doesn't give us the documents, but I'll keep digging for those. But imagine that. The Boston Police Patrolmen's Association. Okay, let's take a look at this actually. I'm telling you guys, I want to get down to the bottom of this. Whoops. What is this? Copy. Paste. Boston Police Patrolmen's Association is the mission of the Boston Municipal Police Officers Association. Boston Patrolmen's Association. Okay, let's just take a this isn't going to let me take a look. Oh, it is. Okay. So this is the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association. These guys were the ones who wrote to the commissioner to get this guy released. I'm looking for symbology somewhere. And I don't see it immediately. Let's go back. Let's actually look at images. Sometimes these images will show. But it looks like, you remember I just said it. It looks like a fraternal order. Oh, what is this? I'm going to look more into this because this really seems like a fraternal order that vouches for each other and they allow each other to get off on heinous crimes. So here it is right here. Here it is right here that this association, they got this guy off. He was then elected. Get this. He was elected president of the association in 20 Rose was charged in August of 2020 sexually abusing a 7-year-old female relative, and now a teenager. Had told police the abuse continued on for 5 years until she was 12. The victim told police that Rose allegedly touched her inappropriately and asked her to perform sexual acts on him in his West Roxbury home. Several more people were that came forward alleging that they were abused by Rose. He was ultimately charged with 33 counts of sexual abuse of children. On Monday, Rose pleaded guilty to a multitude of sexual abuse crimes spanning nearly 3 decades. Rose had previously denied the charges, but reached to a plea deal with prosecutors. This is sensational that this is like not massive news. This is direct evidence that there are internal fraternities where they protect each other from doing these sick, evil things. Check this out. Documents released last year of 1996 internal police department probes showed that top officials concluded Rose likely sexually abused a child, yet he continued to patrol in Dorchester and interact with children and sex abuse victims. Then Police Commissioner Paul Evans and Internal Investigations Chief Anne Marie Doherty released a joint statement in April of 2021 defending their actions, saying that they were unable to discipline Rose because they did not have a witness or evidence, the Globe reported. We believed at the time, and we still believe that everything that could be done by the Boston Police Department was done in this matter to hold Rose accountable, the statement read. This bullshit, excuse my language, but bullshit. No, they didn't. And they know that that's a lie. They're just trying to cover their butts. That's bull. They did everything to hold him accountable by electing him president. I mean, I'm sorry, not them, but Other people elected him president despite knowing that that there is credible evidence that he sexually abused children. And then on top of that, not only did he get nominated president of that police association, but they allowed him to patrol the streets and work with children and sex abuse victims. But they did everything to keep him accountable. On Monday, Suffolk District Attorney Kevin Hayden praised the courage of the victims and said he hoped the plea brings a measure of healing. Anyone who was in that courtroom today knows the tremendous withstood. These are monstrous acts. He side of the court. Following the impact statements, Rose expressed remorse in a statement he read in the court. I want to apologize to for my despicable behavior. He said, I apologize to my former colleagues. I apologize to my former friends, but more importantly, more thing in my life, I apologize to the family, those that I hurt. I'm very sorry. So he admits it. He pleads guilty. And these people want to make us believe that they did everything they could to keep him accountable. Kay Jennett says, this cop sounds like a human trafficker. When he admitted guilt, he seemed like he could not wait to confess. I hope he does confess. This is this should be big news. In fact, I'm going to post this to my social media right when I know. I know I keep breaking up. I apologize. I don't know why that's happening. Okay. So it says, there's one comment that says, why is our justice system so harsh for weed users, but light on child predators? Sickening system. I agree. And I don't use the devil's lettuce, but I with that. People get like harsher sentences for for using the 420, but child predators are allowed to just roam our streets and be around kids. All right, let's move on to the next story. I need to look more into this story because this one is particularly really, really intriguing. I want to know more about this police association. I want to know more about the people who protected this guy. It's not over. I'm going to look more into it. All right, so let's move on to the next one then. This is still coming from the Daily Mail. Okay, so recently it was found that there was a teen boy. He's 14 years old. He is charged with rape and murder of his little cousin, Lily Peters. And her body was found in Wisconsin. And they're now reporting that this little boy, this 14-year-old, is actually the son of a pedophile. A sad story all around. A 14-year-old boy charged with rape and murder of a Wisconsin girl, Lily Peters, is the son of a convicted pedophile. DailyMail.com can reveal. Adam Berger, 37, spent 3 years in jail after being caught with a stash of pornographic images of prepubescent girls on his phone. Berger's son, Carson Peters Berger, 14, is now facing a possible life sentence after being charged with 3 counts over Lily's death: first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree sexual assault, and first-degree sexual assault of a child. According to charging documents for Adam Berger, 10 pornographic photos showing very young girls in spread-legged positions were found on his phone. Some of them had been doctored to include comments such as "first in your little girl's," I can't even read that. I can't even read that. I can't even read that out loud. It's so lascivious and disgusting. I can't even read it out loud. So I'm not. But it's a very derogatory title. This is the little girl, by the way. Those of you listening on podcast, you won't be able to see her. But she is a beautiful little girl who lost her life to evil. Berger's own face was superimposed on some of them. Other pictures showed the children semi-dressed, among them one showing a girl in a green feather boa, black high heels, and another girl wearing a pink tutu skirt. All of the revolting pictures focused on the children's genitalia, according to the court papers. He also had a drug paraphernalia, including 4 crack pipes in his home. In court, prosecutors said Peters Berger planned to rape and kill the victim from the get-go, and when he left the house with the victim to go down the trail. So now they're talking about the son, so the 14-year-old. So the first they were talking about the father. His name is Adam Berger. Now they're talking about Carson Berger. So Carson, the little boy who's 14, it says in court, prosecutor said that Carson Peters Berger, the 14-year-old, planned to rape and kill the victim from the get-go when he left the house with the victim to go down the trail. Chippewa County District Attorney Wade Newell said he punched the victim in the stomach, knocked her to the ground, essentially strangled her, hit her with a stick before strangling her to the point of death, before he then sexually assaulted her. Oh, that is hard to read. And this was a 14-year-old boy. I mean, just demon possessed, yo. Like what? A 14-year-old boy. Peters Berger is now incarcerated. The 14-year-old boy, Carson Peters Berger, is now incarcerated at the Northwest Regional Juvenile Detention Center in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and is due to appear again in court next week. DailyMail.com can reveal that Adam Berger, his father, is currently living in a halfway house in Eau Claire after being released from Oshkosh Institute. That's right. So his father, the pedofifi, is out. The father is out on the streets. This is his picture. The father is out on the father who is a pedofifi who probably taught this little boy all of the deep evil things that he knew to do. He's out on the streets. He remains on supervised probation and is on a sex offender registry. He and his lawyers and exposed extended probation because he would not have had unsupervised visits with his son, who he described in a letter as being the best of me. Other letters filed in support of his bid to regain unsupervised contact with his son describe an unhappy child who never smiled and looked miserable in the company of his mother, Lori Davis. When Berger was sent to jail in May of 2018, Peter Berger's life, was shattered, according to his grandmother, Mary, and family friend, Katie Weathers. His grandmother said Carlson has not been very happy with his father being gone. Weathers accused Davis of being a bad mother, saying, "We've seen him out and about with his mom and he never looks happy. He doesn't smile. He's always quiet and just looks to the ground and doesn't talk." He also accused Davis of trying to limit his contact with Berger's friends and family. The 14-year-old is a product of a brief relationship between Berger and Davis, who is the sister of Lily's father, Alex Peters, 43. This is one of those hard stories to read. You don't want to read about a little girl losing her life in the hands of someone who intended to take it. And then it's by a product of this sick pedofifi who probably taught him everything he knew. Peters reported his daughter missing at 9 p.m. on Sunday when she failed to return home from visiting her aunt. Davis, who is now in a relationship with a convicted fraudster, John Repetto, 50, lives in Chippewa Falls home where Lily was last seen with Peters Berger. The white clapperboard property was sealed off with crime scene tape when DailyMail.com visited on Wednesday and was protected by 2 police vehicles. Davis and Berger split when their son was 2 and appeared to have had an acrimonious relationship with Davis, suing for the child support in 2010. In 2017, before Berger was convicted of child porn offenses, but after he had been arrested and charged, Davis called the police over in an incident where he drove his car at her. Although not allowed to solo contact with his son, who was then aged 8, the charging papers say that they're in a vehicle together. Davis said that she first noticed a suspicious car lurking in the alleyway behind her home and followed the vehicle before it was pulled over into a random driveway. After Peters Berger got out, Berger then reversed into Davis, who then attempted to stop him leaving. She said that he then drove the car at her, leaving her injured when she rolled off the hood and ended up on the ground. When Berger was sent to jail, all physical contact ceased, but a jailhouse letter. Berger said that he emailed with his son daily, spoke to him regularly when he was with his grandmother, and mailed him a crochet blanket he made in prison. Wow. He said he dreamed of a future with the son, adding that he wanted unsupervised contact with the son because he was not a victim of my offense. He added, "My son is the best part of me." The motion was denied, and it was unclear whether Berger was seen with the son since his release on extended supervision in April of last year. Lily, who is a little girl who got killed, lived less than a half mile from her aunt's home, was discovered lying in a little way off a bike trail on Monday morning. Locals in Chippewa Falls said that she was often seen cycling down the path on her bike, which was found close to her body. The spot where she was discovered is close to Jacob Leinenkugel Brewing Company, which sits on the bank of Star Lake. The location is within a view of a row of houses on the other side of the 23-acre lake. Like her cousin, 10-year-old Lily was the product of a broken home and lived with her father, Alex, who has a string of convictions of drug and alcohol offenses, including several DUIs. Davis has also multiple convictions for drug offenses, all dating from at least 2 years before her son was born, and was also arrested for domestic battery in December of 2005 following an altercation with her then husband, John Davis. Meanwhile, Lily's mother, Jennifer Early, 38, is currently on probation after being convicted of multiple accounts of theft, including for swiping 4 of her mother's credit cards and racking up a bill totaling $7,788. She also cheated her aunt and uncle out of $10,000 by inventing fake jobs for them, even conducting false interviews in a bid to get hold of their banking details. Early, who remains on probation, split from Peters in 2018 in January, moved more than 60 miles away in a tiny village of Balsam Lake. All in all, this is such a broken and sad, dark story of a little girl who didn't ask to come into this broken family, and yet she was, and she ended up in a fatal, sick and evil predation off of a broken product. Let's take a look at your comments tonight. Whew, that was a hard one. That was a hard one to see. The only Marley Nat, do you have your router by itself in open air or is it in confined space? Sometimes when they get hot, they do that. You know what? That's a good tip. I'm going to actually check that out. It is in the open air, but maybe I need to put it in more open air. It is in a little bit, it's not in a confined space, but there's like furniture around it. So maybe that's it. I'm going to go take a look at it. And I use the internet all day. Kay Jennett says, please look into Lacey Fletcher case death. Her parents worked in high places. I will indeed. Casey Fletcher or Lacey Fletcher. I'm writing it down. All right. Mark says, this is sad. This world is just so oversexed. It's disgusting. I agree. Kay Jennett says, Or, uh-oh, this is about to overheat again. Okay, here we go. Okay, Natalie, I was hoping you would cover the story. It's very sad and horrible. I think that the father should be in trouble too. Yeah. I mean, it's such a weird thing that the father is out on the streets, in a halfway house, and his son ended up being a product of his sick intentions. Evidently, he has another son that OD'd and another son that committed the S to himself. I mean, this is just satanic. And Rana says his dad may have done bad things to him. Maybe so. It's wildly disgusting that this just gets darker and darker every day. Every day, it's not that we get lighter stories. We just keep reading out what's going on in the world. And these are the true atrocities of the world. So guys, thanks so much for your time and attention to this. Thank you so much for keeping in the know of what's going on in the dark world of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. You didn't know, and now you do. Please share this podcast or this video with somebody who needs to know this news. I'm going to go ahead and sign out for the day. I appreciate all of you so much. I will talk to you in the next pod. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Unravel with Natalie Denise. Please give this podcast 5 stars.